Great to be with you, Mel. It's interesting times, less than 90 days to an election. If we lose it, we lose this country. So stakes are high. But it hasn't really. Before I went in, I was mission oriented. After I'm out, I'm mission oriented. During those 4 months, my new book, The New MAGA Deal, got published. It's my mission now to help President Trump win this election. What the New MAGA Deal book does is, in 37 chapters, lays out 100 actions in 100 days that President Trump is going to do to solve the problems that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden created on the economy, on the border, on foreign policy, crime in our streets, the weaponization of our justice system, and all this woke, crazy stuff, which is so far away from the center of even the Democrat Party. So I'm just trying to focus on that right now. I'm watching Kamala Harris run away from every position she's ever taken to get to where she is today in order to deceive the American people. It's Kamala is what she is. She is like the border. It's like suddenly she's the friggin' champion of border security, wants to hire a bunch of more Customs and Border Protection agents, even as she called ICE agents Ku Klux Klan members like the day before. So I'm focused on this, Mel, and we gotta get it. The New MAGA Deal book, newmagadeal.com, and on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's the information we need to beat her on policy. Policy. I think the personal attacks some of the Republicans have been making have backfired. Yep. We don't need that. Just have to, she's the defracking queen. She's the defunding the police princess. She's got zero experience on foreign policy, even as the Middle East is on fire, Ukraine's on fire, the crime in our streets. It's just like everything Biden Harris touched has turned to danger.
Yeah.
Everything Biden and Harris have touched have turned to danger for the American people. And I think the biggest thing that is on the minds of people right now, unless they go to Wall Street to work every week or Aspen to vacation, is how do you pay your bills?
Right.
In Trump's America, you didn't have to choose between food on the table, medicine in the cabinet, or a roof over your head. But that's the reality of Kamala's world.
Yeah.
Kamala, can call it Camelot, right? Camelot. Right. It's like Camelot of inflation, Camelot of border crisis, Camelot of wars, Camelot of woke nonsense. That's what Camelot is. Well, I'm glad you raised that, because I've actually written about the Waltz problem. It's a generic problem we have with the communist Chinese, because as one of their broad strategies to defeat this country, what they do is they get out their checkbook and they write checks to thought leaders, opinion leaders, academics, teachers, and they shower them with money, they shower them with flattery, and that way they make these people kind of their kowtowing agents who will testify that somehow communist China is not the authoritarian dictatorship that steals our jobs that it is.
Yeah.
And they did that with Tim Walz. It's certainly not the first politician they've done it to, won't be the last. But the breadth and depth of what they did to that guy's mind, I mean, he's like literally the Manchurian candidate.
Yeah. That's
what he is. He's the Manchurian candidate. They brainwashed him. He thinks he had a great experience over there. They're just kissing his ass, right? Don't let him see the slaves in Xinjiang or the sweatshops in Shanghai, or all of the stolen counterfeit goods that are on the docks coming our way. It's just, I mean, I think Tim Walz as a VP pick is ultimately going to be Kamala Harris's downfall, unless she continues to keep lying about her positions, which is going to catch up to her as well. I think Walz is going to be her downfall because it indicates such poor judgment in so many ways. I mean, let's think about this. Okay, let me give you a quiz, Mel. Okay, name the Midwest state, okay, that most closely resembles California in its radical and liberalness. Who would that? Which state would that be?
Michigan, I would say. Michigan is one. Minnesota, obviously. Wisconsin.
Obviously, it's Minnesota. Okay, right. So let's think about that. So you got California at the top of the ticket, Minnesota as the VP. Okay, it's like, I don't think, okay, of the 48 other states, there's probably 6 or 7 of them who might want to live in the California, Minnesota world. But the rest of us, I mean, stay the hell out. I mean, I spent over 30 years in California, and I watched that place deteriorate to the point it is now, where the icon of San Francisco is Babylon. I mean, it's nuts. So my point with Walz, look, let's think about this. The stolen valor issue is basically one of him masquerading as a soldier who went to war. That's a character issue. The communist China problem, where he's the Manchurian candidate, where he's been brainwashed, there's no way that he will ever sit in the Oval Office and do what I did, for example, or what the president did, is like talk about slapping tough tariffs on China, pulling investment out of there because they're stealing all. It's just, he'll be a voice for Beijing right there. So that's frightening. So we got our work cut out for us, because they got a lot of money to spend. You see in their ads now. But more importantly, they get a lot of free media: ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, and Bloomberg, Axios. They're all the mouthpieces and first line of defense for the Harris-Walz ticket. I mean, they've turned her into friggin' Joan of Arc in 3 weeks. It's like your head's spinning.
I know.
She's Kamala liar. She's copycat Kamala. She is radical, and more important on stuff like foreign policy, she has no experience. Mel, can you think of a single major presidential candidate ever who has zero foreign policy experience?
No.
She's got zero economics experience. You could argue, oh, well, she'll have advisors. But think about this, Mel. It's like the advisors who got us into this mess are the ones that are going to be advising her. How does that work? I think the important thing to do here is you start with where she stands on policy. So let's take fracking, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, Pennsylvania actually is going to start its early voting in less than a month. That's frightening in and of itself. I mean, think about that. They're going to be voting, I think it begins on September 6th.
It's insane.
Right? So there's like no chance to campaign. But she says initially that she's against fracking when she's running in primaries and doing all that stuff, right? And then now she's trying to back away from that. Okay, so well and good. So she's a radical, and now she's a liar. Okay, get it. But the next thing you got to do with that is you got to kind of bring that home. It's like, if you think about 2 things. One, all the jobs that have been lost in the state of Pennsylvania because of the Harris no fracking ideology. That's number one. And then it's also national security. It's the fact that because Biden and Harris came in, they killed the Keystone Pipeline, they shut fracking down, suddenly we went from energy independence to relying on Russia and Saudi Arabia for oil. And oil is 40, 50% higher than it was, right? So that's not only is it unemployment from her no fracking position, it's also inflation for families because the price of energy goes way up. And it's also national security because suddenly you're more exposed to risks associated with Russia and Saudi Arabia and Iran and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were energy independent as we were under Trump, we wouldn't have to worry as much about all the craziness that goes on every day in the Middle East that may disrupt the Persian Gulf or do this or do that. I mean, we had tons of troops over there. And what do the mullahs call American troops in the Middle East?
Yeah.
Targets.
Right.
So this is, I think, it's going to be interesting to see if Kamala Harris can manage to avoid any kind of blame for 6 of the worst crises we've ever had in this country, all coming at once.
Yeah.
And if she's able to do that, it's because of ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, and the New York Times. Well, you have to be a certain trumpet, not an uncertain one. And you take, for example, Saudi Arabia. During the Trump administration, right out of the gate, President Trump developed really good relations with Saudi Arabia. And it had 2 immediate benefits. One, he had a very large, one of the largest arms deals in history ever with Saudi Arabia, which was good because that means if they're using our arms, they don't have to use our soldiers. Okay, yeah. So when we sell arms to an ally to defend itself, that means we don't have to send troops there necessarily. Right. So we're creating a bunch of jobs here in the defense industry. We're avoiding having to send soldiers over there if need be. And Saudi Arabia's happy, we're happy. Now, the second benefit was, and I saw this on more than one occasion, President Trump, if the price of oil started going up, he could call the king or the crown prince and say, hey, we don't like this. Keep it down. It's bad for the global economy. And they would keep the price down. So Biden and Harris get into office, and for whatever reason, there's just this hostility towards Saudi Arabia with both of them. We had the same problem with Obama, and suddenly the arms deals are in jeopardy, and suddenly they're talking this, that, and the other thing about bad stuff about Saudi. Saudi's thinking, why would we put our nation in that boat if every time they have an election they're going to flip positions on us? So at that point, what does Saudi do? The Saudi goes and it's like no more petrodollars and cozying up with China and Russia on an alternative to the currency. So that's just one example of how foreign policy matters. And it redounds to, if the Saudis start going off petrodollars, actually our mortgages go up.
Right.
Put that together. You think Kamala Harris could put those 2 dots together? I don't think so. So what I liked about being in the Trump administration is that the boss, he understood things at a really deep level. It's 3-dimensional chess.
Right. And
he had specific strategies, goals, and ways to implement that. So here we go again. We got a fight on our hands. I want to just stress this book, The New MAGA Deal. It's actually published by Don Jr.'s publishing house. You can go to the website, newmagadeal.com. It's got about a third of the chapters are written by former Trump officials and supporters Rick Grinnell does a beautiful job setting the stage on foreign policy.
Great.
Russ Bode, I don't know if you know, Mel, but he was the head of the Office of Management and Budget, does some of the fiscal cliff issues. Mike Davis, who I'm a big fan of, has several chapters on the weaponization of government. Dave Bernhardt, who was the Secretary of Interior, talks about strategic energy dominance, and so on. And so it's 100 actions in 100 days to deal with their crises. It's New MAGA Deal, newmagadeal.com. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. And what we have to do, I think, to win this race is to draw a clear contrast. I see this race as kind of the Lyndon Johnson, the Richard Nixon, George McGovern race. Okay, a lot of presidential races, they're moderates against moderates, right?
Right.
And so it's just Tweedledum, Tweedledee. This is not that. This is this. It's Richard Nixon who commanded the middle of the country, the silent majority at the time. That was real, versus George McGovern, who was a fringe candidate who somehow grasped the Democrat. Same thing with Hubert Humphrey, who was from Minnesota, by the way. Both times, Nixon beat liberals, and that should be what should happen this time, because what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz represent, that's the middle of the country. They're way over.
Right.
They're way over to the side. They are extremists in the worst sense of the word, trying to masquerade Camellia Kamala, copycat Kamala. It's like this thing, I don't know if you saw it, but so she's in Las Vegas, right, where it's a service industry kind of state. And she's given a speech and pops out of her mouth. She's going to no longer tax tips. Right? The place goes, wow, yeah.
Right.
So she said that after Donald Trump had been saying that for the last 2 months. And I don't know, her speech writers maybe failed to look and see that she was like the tie cat. She cast the tying vote in favor of the bill that increased funding for the IRS, including funding to crack down on taxation to tips.
Right.
Like, will the American people tolerate that kind of duplicity, or is she banking that those swing voters out there who are so hard to find and get maybe aren't going to be paying enough attention to that kind of stuff, and all they're going to hear is no taxes on tips, or I'm the tough border czar now, even though I was missing it in action up until this point.
Right.
Yeah, you see, I don't think this general election is about MAGA at all. As far as I'm concerned, we have the MAGA base. The Republican and MAGA base is rock solid. We don't have to worry about that. What we have to do is find the swing voters and explain to them that you have a choice between Trump's America and Kamala Harris's America.
Right.
Trump's America, you were safe, the borders were secure. In Kamala Harris's America, we've had 10 million illiterate, illegal, dangerous aliens come across to murder, rape, sex traffic, drug cartels, Chinese spies, Islamic terrorists, and a flood of illiterate workers flooding into markets, driving down wages. That's Kamala's world. Do you want to live in that world? In Trump's America, you didn't have this runaway inflation. In Kamala's, you do. Yeah. In Trump's America, every law enforcement agency, organization supports him, endorses him. Right. In Kamala Harris's world, it's like the people in uniform, they they just cringe when they hear or see her, particularly when they lie. I mean, how would you feel? How would you feel today to be a Customs and Border Protection agent?
Right.
Who for the last 4 years has been nothing but tongue lashed by these son of a bitches in the White House, from Biden and Harris, Mayorkas on down, describing CBP agents as brutal and inhumane and this, that, and the other thing, even as they throw millions of illegals at them and then give them no tools to deal with. And suddenly she's saying she's going to hire more of you when you know all she's done is abuse you. I mean, it's like heads explode. Yeah. What is that all about, Kamala? You are a freaking, you just will say anything.
Yeah.
And not do anything. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing to do is vote early, number one, and then find family members, friends, colleagues to do that as well. Proselytize. You can use the new MAGA deal book essentially to spread the gospel a little bit. If they don't understand MAGA and what Trump's going to stand for, you can tell them or you can give them the book. It's like, that's what you do. Then get involved maybe at your precinct level. Make sure they're not going to steal stuff. Depending on where you are, if there's drop boxes that people put stuff in, like the Democrats did in 2020 to steal that election, let's get a peace watch on those things. I know we don't want to get any conflict, but we want to make sure they don't do that again. It's the new MAGA deal. The subtitle is The Unofficial Deplorables Guide to the Trump 2024 platform, newmagadeal.com, newmagadeal.com. That'll take you to Don Jr.'s website.
Great.
Or just go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Okay, awesome. And we will be seeing you in October in North Carolina for what Clay Clark is calling the Navarro Palooza.